was this past summer at Oshkosh, my first time that I met Graciela Tiscareño-Sato, and immediately she impressed me. There was absolutely no hesitation between either of us about sharing the projects that we had been working on. I knew that Graciela had to be at Faces of the Industry this year. I've had the pleasure of getting to know and work with Graciela these past few months in preparation for this event. And it is my honor to introduce the keynote speaker, sponsored in part by Propelled by Delta, author, entrepreneur, former officer in the United States Air Force, and navigator on the KC-135, publisher, veteran, White House Champion of Change recipient, and mother, Graciela Tiscareño-Sato, aka Captain Mama, Capitan Mama.
Thank you, thank you. How many of you have been to Oshkosh? A few? Okay, go. Just go. I'm not gonna try to explain it. People try to explain it to me and it just doesn't work. So you have to just go. It's life-changing. It's not even about the networking. I mean, you're just standing in line to go to the porta potty or get a beer and you meet somebody who's like this incredible person from Australia or the pilot from Namibia or something. It's amazing. So yeah, go, go, go. So thank you. Thank you for going. Thank you for coming to the Latinas in Aviation booth. We'll see more about that later. So I'm not going to be on the stage. I've asked you to come down because this is a keynote conversation. I'm not going to make you sit on your hands and knees or your hands. Waiting to ask questions at the end. We're going to do it along the way, okay? I've designed it that way. All right, there's my contact info. My Instagram is Captain Mama, and then if you type another C, it'll be for Captain Mama, Capitan Mama, with the whole bilingual thing. So Captain Mama, put a C, you'll find it. And if you want these slides, which you're going to want the slides for resources, just send me a message. Okay, so I'm going to walk around. I hate to have to spin around, but I'm going to have to do that. You see the title here. I'm going to talk about the lessons that aviation is teaching you. You don't even know yet how prepared you are for all of life. And the lessons are around allies and adventure and art. What? Did she say art? Advocacy? All these things that you're learning in your training, you're actually being prepared for the chaos of adulting, in addition to your career. And you're going to see what I mean. And really my goal here is things you can use. This theme of faces, let's talk about faces, shall we? This is my slide. So faces, you saw the picture there? I just did 12 school assemblies in Houston last week ahead of the Airshow. And I show this picture in classrooms and I say, I'm here representing all the military veterans that don't look like Tom Cruise, military aviators. So what did you notice about the picture? I'm the only woman. That's one of the things that people notice. What else? Most of them look like Tom Cruise. Yes, and there's one more thing that people usually notice.
Only one person of color.
One person of color. So that's usually the boys notice the African-American man, my friend Sean Williams, and then the girls notice me. So I show you that, and I'm going to show you at the end what the change has been in the Air Force in terms of who goes on to pilot and navigator training, our aeronautical ratings. So I wanted to start with that, just so you can see it. Because see, I see many, many faces in the work that I do now as an entrepreneur, as Captain Mama. I see them on the flight line at air shows like Houston last weekend, and I'm going to Little Rock on Thursday for the next weekend's air show. I see them in high schools. We bring them out to the flight line. Many faces. Elementary schools, middle schools. This is what I do. This is my calling now. And as I look at these faces, you know, I'm asking these questions, and then I hear things like this. I want you to read this. I'll read it out loud. It kind of makes me want to cry. I want to live my life like Graciela, to go to college and have adventures, but I don't want to disappoint my parents. This was said by an 8th grade girl in rural Idaho before the Cow and Thunder air show. Now, if you're Latino or Latina, you probably understand what this means. I'm seeing heads nod. What does it mean? Like if you try to do something and then you fail? That's part of it, very good. What's another interpretation of this statement by a girl? Okay, I'll tell you. What she was telling her counselor and her principal is that she was raised to stay close to her family. And here comes this lady into her classroom talking about 27 countries that the Air Force has taken her to. And she's like, I want that, but if I leave, I'll disappoint them. So it's this culture of fear of going away. And it's hard to be the first to go away. Anybody who's been the first to go away, first generation student, know what I'm talking about? It's especially hard from this particular culture for the girls and the pressure that they're hearing. So that's just one of the things. But that leads me to this key message that you're going to see me repeating for you today. You will be successful when you surround yourself with people who want you to be successful. And I'm going to show you that the opposite of that is also true. So what that means in her case is she was crying in the hallway saying this after my visit to her classroom. And because she voiced it, because she voiced this desire for aviation and adventure, but that drag, that disappointment she's going to cause her parents when she goes away, or what happens if she goes away and she fails, like you said, right? Now, because she said it, her principal and her counselor sat down with her and they made a 5-year plan for her to get scholarships and go to college. So when we ask ourselves, who said it earlier today? What can I, the first panel, what can I do every day to move the needle to more inclusion? This is what I do. I cause these conversations to happen in the communities with the faces that we're all talking about. Because that's what it takes, the real conversations. I'm going to tell you two types of stories today. I'm going to tell you the military aviation, the airplane stories of being on this career plane, and then I'm going to tell you about this career that I've invented. We've heard a lot about careers, corporations, how do I get hired by? But there's this other world that I want you to just consider. And that's the world of those of us who create businesses, entrepreneurship. So I represent women veteran entrepreneurs in that sense, okay? And the business that I created, because I'm so passionate about giving opportunity to girls like me, to boys like me, to the boys and girls in all the communities we've been talking about today. But I do it every day of my life now. I've literally created a business to be able to do it full time. To give the advantages that I did not have as we work to diversify the skies. Okay, and then there's these objections. You know, when I walk into a school or I do a parent engagement workshop in Espanol with the mummies and the puppies, oh, the things I hear. Here we go. Tengo miedo de las alturas. The boys and girls say that means I'm afraid of heights. Like, now standing on a tall building looking straight down, I don't like that either, but that's not what flying is. Okay, so we talk about that. Let's talk about addressing each one. Or how about this one? Mi hija no va a irse al ejército. That means my daughter's not going into the military. No way. Or the third one. Eso es para los ricos. That flying stuff, airplanes, that's for rich people. And the last one is the gatekeepers that we find in the education system who, when I want to talk about getting girls and boys up on Young Eagles flights or Women of Aviation Week, the administrator, as a gatekeeper, says, don't bother. Those parents are never going to let their kids go out on an airplane. So they're basically saying, forget it, don't even talk to them. They're not going to allow their kids to go. So do you see these are like structural things that are in the way before we could ever get them into a program as awesome as what you have here? So why am I so intent on bringing this opportunity? Tell you a couple stories, things that happened to me on active duty. So it was the spring when we were active in Bosnia and Herzegovina. The big operation there was Slobodan Milosevic and all the genocide that was happening. Because I speak 3 languages, I was selected to go over, and because I have wings, you need an aeronautical rating on your chest, and multiple languages, I was selected to go work in Vicenza, Italy, the battle staff. Pretty much looked like that. 16 NATO countries, and I was the only woman with wings in the place. And one night, the phone rang and said, Captain Tiscareño, we have a situation in Sarajevo. Some Norwegian soldiers were playing with smoke grenades while they were drunk, and blew up. We have severe injuries. How quickly can you divert an airplane over here and get these guys out of here? So this is life and death stuff, okay? When you see my story of how I even got in this moment, I remember just going, where's the adult in the room? It was me, like I was the officer in charge. So very quickly, I had to study which airplanes were coming in and out of Sarajevo and decide which one was gonna be the best one that I could redirect to come get these guys that were literally bleeding out and inhaling smoke. So I approached the Greek, that's a Greek C-130 right there, the colonel, and I said, sir, I need to borrow your C-130. He was gonna fly in and pick up the soldiers that were leaving, but now I'm gonna take his airplane and do a medical evacuation. So that's what we did. And 2 of the 3 survived, 1 still died. So you guys know aviate, navigate, communicate, yeah? You've all heard that one? Okay. This is the next step. This is organize, prioritize, and execute. I would love for you to write that one down. Put it in your phone, write it down. Because aviate, navigate, communicate is awesome in the plane. In real life, you need more than that. Because it's so overwhelming, right? And in this moment of overwhelm, I went back to aviate, navigate, communicate, even though I wasn't doing that. But it was like a variant of that I needed in that moment. I organized the situation, I prioritized what we need to do, and then I executed my plan with my team. So that's what I'm going to show you, a couple of these scenarios. You know, what was the situation? What did we resolve? What did we learn with the team? Please take it with you. Because my goal here is to get you a little more ready for all the hard stuff that's coming. Who is this woman? Why did you pick her? Evan, who is this? I'm going to introduce myself a little bit more. So I come from here. Mommy and Papi are from Mexico, Ciudad Juarez, and Chihuahua. I was born 0.25 miles north of the border in El Paso. I always wonder what my life would have been like had I been born a tiny bit south. But my parents had moved here, and so I was born there. Very traditional family, very Catholic, very traditional in the roles for girls. And my community saw a Girl Scout. Very Americana, I'm a Girl Scout. My community saw a student who was excellent in math and science, very competitive in math and science. My community saw a competitive athlete, it's volleyball, basketball, soccer, and a trombonist. That's what they saw. What they didn't see. Oh, yes, what I saw was my friends, whose parents would take them on vacations to Hawaii. We're going to Paris this summer, they would say. Yes, my grandmother in Austria is going to have us come over. And I'm like, cool, we're going to get in the car and drive to Juarez again. We're in Paso. Those are our family vacations. Because remember my picture over here? That's a lot of people to get on the plane, right? So I would look at the contrails over the Rocky Mountains and wonder, where are those planes going? I wonder what's over the mountains. Because I had no idea. But I aspired to have lives like that. Air shows, how many of you got to go to air shows as a child? Raise your hand. That's a lot of you. Lucky kids. I went to 0. How many of you got to fly on airplanes as a child with your parents? See, I bet that's where a lot of you start to think about flying, right? Yeah, I never did. So I tell you this because I really want you to think about when you speak in generalities of the disenfranchised communities, the unrepresented communities, are we asking why? Why do we not have many more Latino pilots? Where are the women? Why? That's a whole other seminar, with the women. I'm not going to go there right now, okay? But this is a big part of the reason. No exposure. Why do they not get to air shows? You wonder, what's the problem? Why do your parents take you to air shows? Okay? I'm on the air show circuit now, 2nd year as Captain Mama. I have discovered that with the exception of Houston and Hillsboro, Oregon, air show organizers do not let Spanish language media know that there is an air show. So my mother and father never would have even known, which is why I never went. So I kind of take it personally now, and I do that work. I do a lot of the media and stuff, okay? But when we think about, what's their problem, why aren't they there? Understand this is why. The community also did not see that internal conflict we had in our house expressed by that girl. I want to go away, but I don't want to disappoint my parents. Okay? That's not a conflict, because you're expected especially as the oldest, to stay home until you get married. And you're like, but Graciela, it's 2023 now. That's not what's going on. Oh, it's going on. That example I just gave you, that was in August. Okay, the cultural stuff is real and deep in immigrant families. So it takes all of us. I'm going to give you things you can do. It takes all of us to start changing those mindsets and really interfere in those decisions. So they started name calling me, which is really a fun thing to do in Latino communities. Rebelde, que rebelde es tu hija, they would say at church. Was your childhood similar? Did anybody else have a childhood similar to this in any way? With expectations of staying close to home and things like this. Yeah, okay, so you know what I'm talking about. But, like we've been talking here today, I found a mentor. I equip students with this magic question. How can I pass my check grade? How can I go to college? How can I get the scholarship? How can I is what I did, and when I asked that question, my high school counselor's husband became my mentor. Because my counselor said, oh, you want to go to college? Yes. And I said, how do I do that? And she said, come to my house for dinner. Meet my husband who grew up in Appalachia, a huge family, and he'll tell you what he did. And that's the man who told me about the Air Force ROTC scholarship. And you guys are wearing some Air Force logos? There you go. So you know what I'm talking about, okay? I would never have known that the Air Force would pay for me to go 4 years to college had my high school counselor's husband not happened to be an Air Force major who did it, okay? So I got so lucky. Did I? Or was I asking the questions? Both, right? So that's why I do this work, because I want them to know. My family, shocked. The church ladies, de veras vas a dejar a tu mamá, which means you're really going to leave your mother. Extremely judgmental. No parties, no yay, you got in the top #1 university in the country top. Nope. They didn't even know where it was. They were trying to persuade me not to go. And guilting me because I would leave my mother. I'm like, yep, I'm going, it's my time. My family, to their credit, didn't stop me, they drove me out. I said, let me fly to California, please, I've never been on an airplane. My dad says, you're going into the Air Force, you're gonna be on plenty of airplanes. I said, but Bobby, I'm gonna be a civil engineer. I'm probably not gonna get on airplanes. Well, that's not what life had in store. I'll repeat this with the mentor, my counselor and her husband. You'll be successful when you surround yourself with people who want you to be successful. And they wanted that for me. So finally, I get to go on an airplane because I had a scholarship, and there's 2 guys in the ROTC Corps that were also in the marching band. They also played trombone like I did, and they said, hey, you know, we can go fly for free to the game against Missouri. So I said, what? Free airplane flights? Are you kidding me? They were about to create a monster. So we got some orders, and we flew from San Francisco to St. Louis on Flying Tigers or TWA, I don't know what. And there we are with our trombones. So these 2 guys taught me how I could get free airplane rides. Dream come true. Second time I was on a plane was 2 years later. ROTC, summer training, the field training. Are you guys first year, second year? First? Okay, so after your second year, you're gonna do some field training somewhere. It's a really cool thing the Air Force does, because they know you don't have any idea about actual careers unless you happen to be born to an Air Force family, which most of us aren't. So they take you to different bases and show you different careers. Remember, I'm thinking of being a civil engineer. I have a degree in architecture that I'm working on, and they gave me a scholarship, so I'm thinking there's gotta be architects in the Air Force, right? There aren't, just in case you're architects. Yeah. So I found out there's no architects, and oh my God, I'm already committed for 4 years. The very next day, they flew us to a pilot training base, Williams Air Force Base in Arizona. That's me right there, because they said, anybody want to fly tomorrow? I'm like, another free flight on the little jet? Oh my God, yeah, sign me up. You know, I'm just thinking like roller coaster, fun time. And suddenly, I'm in the jet with her. Whoa, lady pilot, what? So we go up for 45 minutes. She teaches me, she lets me take the controls and roll, and I just remember giggling and giggling and just giggling. I was just a giggly little person. Second time in an airplane in my life. And then we land, we're taxiing back, and she says, this is something you could do. You're the only person I flew with today that didn't throw up. It was July, and it was like 110 or something, right? And I was like, no, that was amazing. That was so much fun, thank you. And she's like, well, you know, if you want to do this, go back and tell the staff you want to fly. I'm like, what? She's telling me that I can fly? I said, no, you don't understand. I have a scholarship in architecture, civil engineering. And she's like, cadet, this is the Air Force. If you want to fly, tell me you want to fly. But I literally had never thought about it. So I'm glad you guys are here. You know, we talked about it, but please invite the ROTC Corps, because maybe you're an ROTC and you know you want to fly. Or maybe you're like me and you have no idea. Okay? But if you ever have that chance to take that flight, take it. So I went back to Berkeley, and I told them, hey, something about flying, what do I do? So you do some paperwork, okay, physical fitness, blah, 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 you did well at summer training. So I got picked to go to pilot training, okay? So let's recap here. I'm 20 years old, I'm in Berkeley, I have a bike, don't have a car, can't drive stick, never been on a plane, I've been on a plane 2 times. And I just got the chance to go to pilot training. So at the time, the Air Force had this thing called light aircraft training in Hondo in Texas, where they took you summer later to go fly on the 172. So it's very structured, you have this much time, you know, academics, I was the star. I was like #1 in my class, all the tests, okay? Get out to the plane, I'm learning. But then I think the 12th ride, you're supposed to solo. I heard earlier today, if you're not ready to solo, don't solo. Didn't have that chance, because it's a program to see if you're ready. So I was like, so no solo for me. Didn't happen. So for the first time in my life, something I tried, I failed. And as I thought about it, I'm like, well, that sucks, right? How would you feel in this moment if you got picked for pilot training and I told you my story, I had no idea any of this is coming. Here you are, you have this chance, and now you fail. How would you feel? What are some of the things that would go through your mind at that point? Lost? Yeah, maybe doubt. Like, what the heck was I thinking that I could even do that? Right? So I don't use the word disadvantage lightly, but do you see the disadvantage right here? My family didn't have the money, didn't have air shows, never went on a plane. I'm like a fish out of water, but I got this cool opportunity, and I said yes. So I ask you, is it really a failure? I was on this path I never even had planned, right? So the initial, yucky feeling of, that didn't make it, went away when I went back. I'm like, well, now what? I still got a scholarship, I still got to serve for 4 years. Could I just serve for 4 years and get out? I said, yes. Or we have these other aeronautical rating positions in the Air Force, because we have crew airplanes. I'm like, oh, crew airplanes. Again, total clueless. So they said, yes, we have a position for you at navigator training if you want. And so now I'm learning about these other opportunities. Now they're called communication systems officer, there's air battle managers, there's these other military ratings where you go to school and you're an aviator and you do different things in the military. Again, I didn't know. So your chance to be resilient is actually how I define failure. Because it isn't really failure, you learn something and then you keep going, okay? And then how you react, how you perceive it, that's where you're defining your character, right? And so what I learned and what the staff said is your math skills are needed somewhere in the Air Force, because really I was really excellent at math. So it's a perfect fit. And guess what? I still graduated on time. My parents drove out and commissioned me as a lieutenant on time. And this was an amazing day. So it wasn't really a failure, it was just a redirect or a pivot, as we've been saying. At undergraduate navigator training, same length as pilot training, same thing. I learned this from one of the instructors. And he said it with this nice southern drawl. He was from Arkansas. He's like, you gotta know the rules if you're gonna play the game. And that means exactly what you think it means. Don't try to fake your way. Not in this space. Not military aviation, not in aviation at all. He reinforced that. And it was funny at the time with the drawl, but it became absolutely pivotal in my life, as you'll see. My parents again drive out from Colorado, this time to watch the wings get pinned on. And there's that picture I showed you. The other thing I want to tell you about this is the numbers. Okay, 32 people start. There's not 32 graduates. Just like in pilot training, navigator training has this attrition rate. So I think we lost 8 out of 32. But guess what? Remember that competitive math thing I told you about? I was third in my class of 24. So it worked out just fine for me because I still got to go do the things. And I picked a KC-135 refueling tanker, and I found myself in Saudi Arabia as a first lieutenant. First deployment, and we're getting chased by MiGs every day. This is when Saddam Hussein was there. He had Russian MiGs, and he was launching his planes and helicopters and basically, committing genocide and things like that. So we're up there doing the combat air patrol, flying combat sorties every day, 01 sorties they called it. And about the 25th sortie, the colonel then puts a package into the Pentagon to recognize us with an air medal, which is for when enemy fires probably unexpected. Looks like this, if you're not familiar. Are you guys familiar with air refueling? Like, have you seen this happen? Like, raise your hand if you're even familiar with it. Excellent. Okay, a lot of times I go to places where they're like, a flying what? Flying gas station. Just some beautiful pictures that we took out the plane. Over the snowy mountains of Iraq. So then, the packages come back to the Pentagon. There's 4 crews. We're the first ones in for Operation Southern Watch. And the 3 crews that had all men got their packages or their air medals. We got a letter that said, Captain Wayman's crew cannot get an air medal because there's a woman on the crew. I'm like, what? Okay, so how would you feel now? No air medal for us. How would you feel now, ladies? You've done all the work. It's been 2 years of training. You're deployed, you've flown at this point, almost 40 sorties. But you can't have the medal everybody else is getting. And guys, how do you feel? Right? How would you feel? Not good. Kind of want to get this chick off your crew, right? I'm like, did you guys make a mistake and train me? Like, what? Right? So, it's discrimination, but it's actually allowed. The law had changed, but not really. We're in this wishy-washy time where the combat exclusion had been repealed, but the DoD had not yet implemented. So obviously I was supposed to be there, they needed me there, I went there, but we couldn't officially recognize it. So yeah, I called it a professional slight to an injustice. So again, this is failure. This feels really crappy. This is like not a good thing. But it's our chance to be resilient. Because what are you going to do? Whine? We refuse to fly tomorrow because you didn't give us a medal. Wham! Are we going to do this? Of course not. So we just kind of laughed it off. The crew is so cool. We're like, well, obviously that's a mistake. It'll get corrected. And the colonel said, yes, I'm going to appeal to the Pentagon because that's ridiculous. Like, okay, I guess we'll just keep on flying, right? But it still felt really not good. 18 months later, the Pentagon kind of shipped the air medal to us, so we got it. And I found out last year, because someone asked in the media, that I'm actually the first Latina aviator in the Air Force to earn an air medal, which is hilarious to me because I wasn't even thinking about that. And then I want to tell you something else that happened in Saudi Arabia. A little tough subject, we got to talk about it. I was deployed over there and I got a call at 2 o'clock in the morning that my brother had just taken his own life. My brother Junior. So it took me 48 hours to get back from Saudi Arabia to Colorado to be my family and with the funeral and stuff. And my family flew down from Spokane. So are we type A personalities in aviation, or are we type A? Right? Put up the wall, nothing's wrong with me, right? All the head nodding. Okay, in the military, let's put an A+ on that, because you don't want to look like you don't have it together, right? So even in grief, in extreme grief and shock, I'm still trying to pretend like I'm handling it. Come back from the funeral, keep flying. Is it going well? So then, somebody decided it'd be a really good idea to do a no-notice check ride. Okay? Military, those of you with military experience, you know what I mean. Okay? Evaluators can show up at base ops at any time and just fly with you and see how you're doing. And somebody decided it would be a good idea to do this to me right now. And let's just say that did not go well. Okay? So you will be successful when you surround yourself with people who want you to be successful, and the opposite is also true. This is the first time where I was not seeking help from anybody. I was literally just trying to cope with this mental health crisis that I was having with the loss of my brother, and I didn't ask for help. And when you try to do the hard stuff by yourself, well, I didn't, and it wasn't okay. Busted that check right terribly. So now I have to find a way to be resilient again. Really hard. But at this point, I said, okay, I'm gonna just take myself off flight status. I said, see you guys later. I went to go report into the mental health clinic and get some therapy, which I should have done before, but all the type A people were telling me not to. So that's a tough story, but you know, aviation and mental health, you've got to talk about it. And nothing good happens when you try to do it on your own. So you'll be successful when you surround yourself with people who want you to be successful, and the opposite is also true. Take that to heart. Again, character definition. When I was writing my first book, my editor said this to me, you know, the way you do anything is the way you do everything. I really had to think about that. You heard this before? You either really do things well, you're a planner, you think it out, or you like chaos and do stuff at the last minute. However you do it, you probably do everything that way. Okay, so this started to become a thing that I really thought about, because if I'm gonna do these things excellently and with help, why would I not do this with excellence and with others in collaboration? So take that with you. The way you do anything is the way you do everything. Okay, crosswind landings, severe crosswind landings. I have a feeling you guys are familiar with that here. How many of you have experienced severe crosswind landings? Not like 5 knots, but like a lot. A couple of you? Okay, so we have these nice little charts in the tanker, and we have, you know, crosswind limits and all of that. And we were deployed to the island of Crete, where one night, after I think a 7.5, 8 hour refueling over the northern part of Africa, one of the jobs that I had as navigator is to watch this crosswind component that's out of limits called a go-around. So, we went around a lot. Let me show you what it looks like. So here is a KC-135 coming in. This was us, this is a video I found. But these nacelles are like 19, 20 inches off the ground, big fat engines. So watch this. Okay, so I would have called it a long time ago, right? But I love this because that was one of the things that we had to do. And that night, and again, it's very unforgiving with those nacelles being so fat and low to the ground. So this is the island of Crete. And that night we were so tired and it was so dark and this airfield is crazy. Okay, this is pretty much the island of Crete I want you to look at. Here's the airfield. And it's the kind of airfield where shepherds very literally let their goats just wander across the runway. It's a daily occurrence. So in the daytime, you know, go around, there's goats on the runway, you're like, okay, whatever, right? So that's standard. At night, the winds are ridiculous. The goat story, I remember somebody said, too bad we can't give goats headsets so that they would know that we're coming and they clear the runway. That actually became our deployment patch because we have humor as aircrew. The goat with the headset. So there's the crosswind limits. The story I want you to take from here is the importance of developing that confidence and speaking up. And speaking up. And in your training and in your CRM, I hope that you really understand how important it is that every voice speak up, say something, okay? Because the consequences were demonstrated to us 10 years ago in San Francisco. Oceana 214. The ghosty plane is what should be happening, the bottom plane is what did happen on a blue sky day. Y'all remember this one? If you're 18, maybe you don't, but some of the older people remember this one, yeah. Whew, and I was right across the bay from my house. 3 girls from China lost their lives, 2 pretty much where the tail section broke, and 1 was thrown clear. Some foam was on her when the fire trucks responded, and she got run over. The story that came out that reported this, and of course air crew, military air crew, we read a lot of these safety reports and the accident reports as part of the training. This one, I was just curious, so I go read it, and one of the things always stayed with me. Okay, the pilot that was flying had more hours, the pilot who's not flying had less hours, and it was a simple thing where saving face culturally, the pilot with less hours did not want to say anything and embarrass the senior pilot, save face, and so he stayed quiet. Didn't speak up, and so that's what happened. So I'm showing you this because, my goodness, especially, I'm listening to the confidence question that young lady asked earlier. What do you do when we lose confidence? Okay, you're going to keep getting better. You're going to show what you know on every exam and every check ride. And by the time you get there, speak up, because you cannot have these CRM breakdowns. And then, again, the question is, how long would you wait in that video to call it, right? But due to cultural training, fear, confidence, whatever reasons, I'm just, I'm not gonna say anything, because I'm gonna make them look bad, and then bam. So, happily, I learned that in the military, to assert my voice, okay? And do not let a problem fester. Again, you can take that with you for your whole life. So next, we're in Saudi Arabia again, popular place to go. And this time I had a bag, like all the communication secrets the military people carry, frequencies, a little thing for scrambling frequencies. It's like a little top secret frequencies bag. And one of my jobs was to, always care for that. And we got off the plane, and this Saudi customs guy comes up to me, and he just basically starts pulling the bag for me. And I'm like, what are you doing, right? And so I had been in this tug of war with this Saudi man, just pulling on this bag. And he knew the rules. It's national communication secrets, hands off. But he thought, oh, it's a woman, maybe I can just make her give it to me. So we're in this tug of war, literally a tug of war. And I'm like, yo, a little help here, please, for my crew. And the commander had just come out, so they came out and talked to him and basically talked him down and left me alone. But I never let go of the bag. So I earned my name, my call sign Bulldog that day, because I was not going to let go. And I'm really glad no one got a picture of it, because it would have been quite embarrassing. But it was literally like me and this Saudi guy. Again, assert yourself. Assert yourself. Don't be shy. Don't shy away from conflict. Resolve it, okay, with the help of allies. The way you do anything is the way you do everything. Human connections, collaboration, everything. Okay, who here is a flight instructor or planning on being one? Okay? So Martin, you probably heard some flavor of this. Takes years to build credibility and seconds to lose it. The Air Force taught me never shoot from the hip. Okay? This is for real. Again, apply it to everything. Because when someone asks you a question, when the students ask you a question, you know it cold and hard, and if you haven't, let's look it up together. Okay? It takes a little bit of extra step, but you don't lose the credibility. And you know what? That's hard. Because you just want to spout out the answer. But it could cost you. So just take that with you. Never shoot from the hip. Okay, a little funny story. So maintenance. Anybody here specializing in maintenance, maintaining aircraft, UMP stuff? Okay, so this is one of my favorite things. We come out to the airplane one day, and the way we do it in the Air Force is you pull up on the bus, and the crew chief meets you, and he hands you the forms. And the forms is everything that needed to be fixed overnight, last mission, what the other crew wrote up, and then what their fix was. Okay, so I'm up at the front, so I take the forms and I start going through the stuff. There was this item that said, strange knocking in the navigation bulkhead. Sounds like little man with hammer. Literally, this was written in the forms. And God bless that crew chief. He looked at that, wrote it up, and the thing that he fixed right next, that he wrote as a fix, he said, removed hammer from little man. Isn't that adorable? Like, what the heck? Okay, so we laugh, we have a good belly laugh, but for me, the takeaway is communicate well and revere your maintainers, okay, please. That hammer thing was so dumb, but yeah, it's a good story. So whether the crew was manned, which was typical, or unmanned, like this crew in England, where we got to fly with all women over there, Aircrew culture is about the mission focus, first and foremost. We have to meet some fighters off the coast of Lakenheath, and they need, 8,000 pounds of gas each, et cetera, et cetera. So we have these very serious mission timing to offload gas to other airplanes so they can get where they need to go. It was a really cool mission. Okay, and that required all the time replanning through the mid-flight, in-flight chaos. When you're over a refueling track in Iraq, and they're launching MiGs, the AWACS is telling you, the radar plane, the AWACS, is telling you have to move the whole track over to somewhere else, and again, we're using code words, and they're asking how quickly can you get to the whatever. So that's where I would have to replan and say, well, we can get over there, but we're gonna have to offload this much less gas because it's gonna take us this much time. So all the math, all the replanning, all the fun, all the time, okay? So you gotta be decisive. I learned all these things, be decisive, take responsibility, do the math, don't waste time with coulda, woulda, shoulda. Oh boy, do we debrief. Okay, it's a standard part of our training, but the debriefs after these missions, when you're leading 12 tankers, each of them refueling a package of 4 to 8 fighters, it's a giant thing. You gotta do a good, long debrief so we can learn. Because we get better. If you wonder how they so good, because wow, we spent all that time debriefing and learning. And what a beautiful thing if you have teenagers. And I don't know who's a parent and who isn't, but to have teenagers, I've been able to apply exactly that thinking. And I even use those words. We're going to debrief what just happened here. So the argument that we had, right? We're not going to blame, we're going to learn. So again, do you see, I'm giving you how the aviation training helps you with the rest of your life. And this has been super helpful for me, the aircrew culture. Ooh, checklists, very important. Okay, before you leave your room, checklist. Before we walk out the door to school, checklist. That way nobody forgets their trombone and expects me to drive it to school and drop it off, because I won't do it. So checklist, 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 ask my kids. That little girl that laid in the grass that wondered where those planes were going, this is a partial map of where the Air Force took me. Partial, because there's more. After 9.5 years of aviation, I was on the verge of making major, which for those of you who don't know, it's the first, second, third, fourth rank in the Air Force. And my commitment, with ROTC, the commitment was 9 years to fly. It was 4 years to get the scholarship, 4 years to pay it back. When I accepted the opportunity to fly, it's a 9-year contract. So now it's time for me to decide if I'm staying or going. And again, I'm looking ahead, so I'm a planner. And I said, so Colonel, tell me what happens when I make major? My master's was done, got the air medal, flight status, got the combat hours, all of it. He says, well, they're gonna want you at headquarters, at AMC headquarters in Scott Air Force Base. And I said, to do what? Staff duty, contingency planning. I'm like, no. Because remember, my goal was to be an educated woman. That's why I got the scholarship. Aviation was like, hey, here's the thing, right? And I loved it. But now you're gonna take me out of that and to do what? So I was not on some career track to stay in the Air Force. That was not why I was there. So once they said, yeah, you're gonna come out of the Air Force or out of the airplane to do staff duty, I'm like, no, I'm done. So I made a decision and I went straight into tech at Siemens, the German company in Silicon Valley. So it was a big radical career change. So if there's any veterans in the room, I know we're doing a workshop tomorrow for the Vets to Wings program. I have a whole process on the storytelling of your value that I teach you because it's a very hard thing to get out of the military. Okay, and I successfully transitioned into tech marketing. And we had global teams with all kinds of accents, and it was really hard, and we figured it out. We did a lot of video conferencing. And the thing that people noticed about me, just coming out of the Air Force, now I'm in corporate, is I was so calm in meetings. And they're like, oh my God, the field test didn't go well, and we're gonna have to push up the launch, and the vice president's gonna be so upset. I'm just sitting there like, is anyone gonna die? And so what people were interpreting that as complacency, but for me, I was like, guys, this is not even stressful. What are you talking about, right? Because of everything that I just told you that I'd already done. So aviation prepares you for the hardest stuff, the biggest decisions where you can't waste time, okay? And then you're just so calm with the rest of it because you're like, no one's gonna die. So thank God for all of that training because you won't believe what happened 18 months after I got out of the Air Force. The irony of it all. Life comes at you fast, and I gave birth to a 1-pound baby at 25 weeks. Imagine a box of butter and a paperclip on top, and that's what my daughter weighed. So how ironic, because when we brought her home, after all these surgeries and flying her in a Learjet to Detroit, her retinas were detaching, to bring home a blind baby. This is cruel. You know, if you ever thought your kids would go into aviation, this is a cruel thing. So we were thrust into the world of blindness, and we're in the NICU for 137 days. In that time, I went from flight suit weight to weighing 50 pounds more because I was pumping my breasts and eating crappy food in the hospital and stressing out because that kid almost died lots of times. So none of that I saw coming, right? So remember this, got no rules if you're gonna play the game. She's about to start preschool, we have a blind baby. And then I remembered, oh wait, I'd already studied all these flight manuals. People are like, you're gonna have to learn how to advocate for your blind kid. I'm like, how do I do that? Trade the flight manuals for special education law, and advocacy. Just new books, new things to learn. You gotta know the rules if you're gonna play the game. If I want my daughter to be literate, if I want her rights respected, she goes to school, I'm gonna apply all the discipline that I've learned as an aviator and all the hard study. I'm gonna apply it now for my kid. And we did, and we learned how to be really amazing parent advocates, organize, prioritize, execute. Pretty helpful, huh? I started writing articles for other parents because there's a new blind person born every day, and new kids with special needs are always being born, and so the desperation you feel as a parent is very real. And I called one of the articles that published in the National Journal, you gotta know the rules if you're gonna play the game. Hat tip to my flight instructor. Because the way you do anything is the way you do everything. And we're meeting with moms and dads who already had blind adult kids. Help me, how do I raise a blind child? I have no idea. And in collaboration, you win. This is a piece of art that my second daughter drew, inspired by a little scribble that I did one day. This is what my life feels like. This is the burdens. This is all the IEP stress and the insurance bills and seizures. She's epileptic now too as of 5 years ago. The expenses, the sadness, what could have been, the loss of potential, all those things. Carrying it on the back so that she can move forward. Resilience. I teach my kids the same thing, organize, prioritize, and execute. And Evan has had the pleasure of talking to me while she was in her community college class in Spanish. We actually had our meeting in Zoom in her classroom one day. Because now we are going to college with her because the community college can't figure out how to support a deafblind person who's learning Spanish. So that's what we do. She's very good with the tech. She won her Braille Bee, which is like a spelling bee. She's a Braille Hall of Fame champion. And she graduated from the California School for the Blind. Okay? So she became my mission. And she's a brilliant pianist and mariachi with the guitarron because I'm a bulldog. Because you're not going to deny my child her educational rights under federal law. And when they tried, I'm like, you don't understand, you're talking to a veteran. And we put our life on the line for our Constitution and our laws. And so you don't get to violate them because it's hard for you. So Bulldog Mama benefits the girl. I share these stories of resiliency with you because honestly, I need to share to survive. It's a lot of overwhelming stuff now, but I teach, okay? And the aviation discipline and procedures that you're learning, I'm telling you, you're getting so equipped for the rest of your life. You'll remember this one day, what I'm telling you. So to combat anxiety and panic, organize, prioritize, and execute. And in all things, please take this with you. You will be successful when you surround yourself with people who want you to be successful. And I'm going to, double stomp this for the young men in the room. Because my commander, when I got out of the Air Force, he told me last year, when he saw an interview with me with the VA. He said, I really wish I would have stayed in touch with you after you got out, because when I got out, I struggled a lot. Because apparently men really want to look like they've got it all figured out. I can transition as a civilian, I can get a job, I can do this by myself, even though I haven't. I'm going to pretend that I can, and he didn't reach out for help, and he struggled and struggled and struggled, and that man went back in the Air Force as a civilian, and he hated it. Because I'm watching you succeed in your career, starting a company, and I'm really wishing that we'd stayed in touch. So what he's saying is, I really wish that I'd been successful, because I surrounded myself with people who want me to be successful. I would have helped him. Okay? So do that. I am so in love with aviation, you guys. Okay? I fell into it. I told you my story. I fell into it. I found this quote from Jeppesen. I love this so very much. He says, for so many of us it inspires art. Let's get one thing straight. There's a big difference between a pilot and an aviator. One's a technician, the other's an artist in love with flight. Okay? We can debate those points, but he's really talking about the art versus the science, right? And I thought, oh my God, that is so true, because look what happens here. Oh no, his picture isn't there. There's this man, his name is right here. He is a staff sergeant. He was a mechanic first, a pilot, he's an Army reservist, and he has these gorgeous paintings. And so there's this picture that I'm sorry is not there, but it's true. And then there's this book I want to recommend to you, because there's so many times that aviation inspires art. You're at the very beginning as students, but just you wait and see. Just you wait and see the inspiration that's going to happen for you. This book here is a private pilot, he owns his plane, and his wife, they fly around together. Anybody read this book, Our Towns? Yeah, isn't it amazing? It's an amazing book. All this stuff you hear about how, we're so divided. They're like, we're really not that divided. Because they're flying into America's small towns, and they're looking at institutions and organizations, and this incredible book that they wrote, it's like our country. And it's their views landing in municipal airports, writing about what they see. And they're doing it from the point of view as aviators, crafting this beautiful piece of art in this book. And I've done the same thing. But I didn't start creating until my son saw me in my flight suit when I was going to his preschool, and he called me Captain Mama. And I started thinking, wow, do women who serve even write books for kids about what they did? There's plenty of my Daddy Wears Combat Boots books, but where are the moms? So I stayed up all night, did some research, and decided to write the first book called Goodnight, Captain Mama, inspired by that conversation. I decided to do it in English and Espanol, because I would love to have had a book like that when I was a kid, when I was a little kid, reading in Spanish, or a mom's flying an airplane. I would love to have had an image like that. Because it's cheaper than going to Hawaii, cheaper than going to an air show. So here is what I'm contributing to the world, a whole trilogy, because moms and Latinas are aviators and veterans too. Award-winning series. And literature is also inspiring music, because the Air Force Band said, Captain Mama, we love these books. We're going to commission original compositions for to accompany the reading of your books. So now you can go on YouTube and you can find the Air Force Band recording La Sorpresa de Capitán Mama, with me reading it in Spanish, and then we took it to 4 schools in San Antonio live last spring. I never would have imagined that this would have happened because of my aviation career. And here's a news flash, I heard it last night, okay? The Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. is debuting an opera, an aviation opera about a woman who's a fighter pilot. What? Yes, it's happening next week. I'm going to be in DC for an award, and I'm going to go. It's called Grounded, and it's this question of, she got grounded from flying, actual airplanes, manned aircraft. She became a drone pilot. But there's a whole psychological cost to being able to do a mission from thousands of miles away and then go home to your family. So, but now it's an opera. Is that amazing? So yes, aviation inspiring art. So are you in love with flight? Maybe you're at the very beginning, can't answer that yet. But if you're really in love with it, if you're really in love with the experience, what art will you create one day? Putting it all together, this is one of my favorite pictures. This is the KC-135 at Fairchild, where I was stationed. This is the Captain Mama booth at the Airshow with the Thunderbirds overhead. Wow, what a cool moment that was. Absolutely beautiful. We're doing all we can for as many as we can. When we met at Oshkosh, I outreached to Telemundo in Milwaukee, and the producer said, ¿Qué es Oshkosh? ¿Qué es AirVenture? What is that? They're an hour away, they've never heard of it. Because see, just like other air shows that are organized, the organizers of AirVenture have never let Spanish language media know that it exists. So all those people in and around Oshkosh and Milwaukee have never heard of it. So thank goodness that I called, they came out, they interviewed all 4 Latinas in aviation at the booth that you got to meet. And now that story's out there, and that crew's gonna come back year after year. Okay, this is what I do. Lots of media in English as well, of course. Oregon, Wisconsin, Washington, California, you'll find it. Front page of the Portland paper in May. Oregon International Air Show puts the Medio Ocho Cubano in Spanish live narration. Because guess what? When I'm showing up so authentically as a proud Latina Air Force aviation veteran who's bilingual, would you do an experiment with this? Would you be the first person in the United States to narrate an entire air show in Espanol? Sign me up. Got to do it in May. It was amazing. 3.5 hours, live streaming on Facebook and with a radio partner in Hillsborough in Espanol. With Martin Zotelo, DJ, who'd never been to an air show. And we had the most fun. So now it's a new service my company is offering. We'll be doing air shows in Spanish all next year. And I can't wait. I made up a new word, Avión narradora. So about those faces, how has it changed? Here's a UPT class that happened last year, made international news. 8 out of the 30 graduates, Advanced Air Force Base, were women. That hadn't happened since 2017 when there were 7. Because it's still onesies, twosies. But this happened, it was international news. And there's some really cool things that came with the story. This is their patch. They pinked it up. They did a Mean Girls quote, "Get in, we're going flying." And then my favorite 2 quotes from that article was one from the gentleman in the group. When I walked in and saw that many girls, I didn't think anything of it. It said Second Lieutenant Shinryo Oyama. In other words, whatever, there's girls here. That's awesome. Okay? Men are just used to it. But still not as many of us there. And then there was a story about how they organized brunches and teams and study sessions, and 2 of the 3 girls became, they were named distinguished graduates. And she said, yeah, it's hard for a reason. We want our Air Force pilots to do complex things. Amen, sister. So here's what the faces look like. I looked for a bunch of different pilot training classes. Faces pretty much look like this, but they also look like this. So the inclusion is happening little by little, little by little. Remember those obstacles I told you about at the beginning? Tengo miedo de las alturas, I'm afraid of heights, etc. I'm going to cover those again. I heard it from Bedla, she was on the left. I was at Scott Air Force Base 2 weeks ago. And she was like, no. I said, hey, put on the flight suit, feel like an aviator. And it's one of the things I do here, the KC-135s in the background. Sponsored event, the kids got books and patches. And she's like, no. Yo le tengo miedo a las alturas. I'm afraid of heights. So she was like, I'm so afraid of heights, I don't want to put the flight suit on, it's too scary. I'm like, chica, come on, put it on, seriously. And so she did. And I said, standing on a skyscraper looking down is not the same thing as flying, so she put it on. And then she started asking me questions about the scholarship I got that she read in the bio in the book. And then her friend Alba came over and said, dime más de la beca. So now we're talking, now they know it's a possibility for themselves and they know how to start. This is what I do. The second objection, mi hija no va a irse al ejército, my daughter's not going to go to the army. Papi, sit down, I say at the air show, let's talk. And I educate parent by parent. The Army's not the Air Force. Enlisting is not the same as officer training. There's nothing to be afraid of. And if he's digging in, I remind her that when she's 18, it's her decision. And he might as well get behind it. Because everybody knows the name Vanessa Guillen. Yes, the soldier who was killed in Fort Hood. Everybody in the Latino community knows about it, so there's much fear. So I address that. Eso es para los ricos. That's for the rich people. Okay, we were talking about this earlier. Where's Monique and her dad? Here, I don't know if they're here or not. Okay, she was telling me that was one of the things that was also heard in the community, right? Es para los ricos. Maybe you heard this in East LA, yeah? Like this is for rich people. Well, I told you my story. There's a pathway to start flying and getting experience Becoming an aviator doesn't cost you, you get paid to do it. And then, of course, we have the new movie on Amazon Original. Has anybody seen this yet? A Million Miles Away? The Jose Hernandez story? Please watch it. He's an astronaut, son of a farm worker. And he had applied to NASA 12 times before he got accepted. It's a story of resiliency. But it's so much more. But his story is making it obvious that you can even go into space without having money. So, you know, we're putting to bed these myths that are out in the community that keep people from even imagining a starting point, imagining applying to a program like this. And I'm really excited to know about it now because it's going to be one more resource I can offer the community. And then that last one, so don't bother. Their parents never going to let them fly on airplanes. Gatekeeping educators who basically have stereotyped a whole community. They're not going to let the kids fly, so why would you bother even telling them about it? So I have to go around them, and I have to do parent engagement events directly with the families and speak Spanish and explain to them what the program is and why it's okay to let your daughters try it. And I do. And then we got 50 young girls up to go fly, and Telemundo and KGO in San Francisco covered it. Do you have any questions for me? Because I want to end with this thought. God, who was it? The second woman from the left, the first panel. The Boeing lady. Lacey. She said, the question is about I. Remember when she said that? What am I doing every day to move that needle, to be more inclusive, to bring more people in? I literally have created a way through entrepreneurship and being an author of doing exactly that. This is what I do now. I get to go over the country and do this. I'm headed to Little Rock next. The Air Force Maintenance Squadron there is actually hosting. So I'm going to be in their booth because they want all the people coming over to the maintenance booth to meet Captain Mama, author meet and greet, try on the flight suits, and get a book with the packs that says, we keep them flying. The Colonel's putting his maintainers front and center at the Airshow, and I get to be part of that. And again, we're going to attract so many more people in the STEM Expo. We're doing media outreach in English and Spanish, because yeah, that's what I do every day. Thank you so much. I hope you see that failure is just a redirect, and that I've been able to stay fully engaged in aviation my way to expand the pie. What questions do you have for me? Resource slides are here. Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Do you have a favorite mission that you did as an navigator?
Oh, a favorite refueling mission. Yes, SR-71. And I usually show it at schools. The reason why is because when you're rendezvousing with another airplane to refuel, you go to a special track. There's an initial point to enter the track, and then there's a control point. So ARIP, ARCP, and then there's specific times you're supposed to meet at each one. And you do all this coordination. We hack our clocks because you can't be 30 seconds off, right? When you're flying the speeds. So SR-71 was more complicated because it was coming from, I don't know, the unpublished real altitudes that we don't really know what they were. We're going to guess 100,000, 120,000 feet, okay? But they're screaming down through our altitude to get gas. And so we had like tables, stopwatches, chicken bones, because you're doing this math at closure speeds with them. And the closure speed is reducing as it's coming out of its orbit. It's slowing down. So you have to keep going to the tables every 10 seconds, and at some point you got to call the turn and the bank giggles, so we roll out 3 miles in front of them. Very unforgiving mission. Only a few of us are qualified to do it, because you can't screw up. You can't end up behind the SR-71. We're going as fast as we can, they're going as slow as they can. So the challenge of the math of that was my favorite one. Plus, it's just so cool looking. Like after we get the rendezvous, I can check out and go to the back and watch and take all the pictures and stuff. So, yeah. And also any of the stealth aircraft is super beautiful to look at. But mathematically speaking, it's the Blackbird. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes. Go ahead.
So you were talking about how you talk to a lot of children who want to grow up, they're from maybe like underprivileged communities. How do you specifically direct them to get into aviation? Do you pretty much just kind of like preach the military to them? That's kind of what I do because that's how I got into it, as far as the financial aspect. But do you direct them to other routes, or do you mainly just encourage the military for that?
The first thing I do, because if they're at least 3rd grade, is when I go into the school assembly, I've already looked up the local EAA chapter and the local Young Eagles contact, and I talk about that program first. Because that's how they can get as soon as there's the next Young Eagles program. And I'll tell you this, everywhere that I've gone, I've yet to find a school with when I mention that program, the principal and the teacher is already familiar with it. They don't know. So whatever outreach EAA is doing, it's not going to the schools I'm going to, which is a Title I school, schools with dual language programs, okay? So that's what I do. I direct them there first because that's free and it's right there in their community. When they're teenagers, I talk about the AIM High Flight Academy that the Air Force now has. So if anybody knows a 16 to 18-year-old, the AIM High Flight Academy is the Air Force's summer program. They apply now, they get chosen in like January, February, and it's 3 weeks of flight training in the summertime. What's very interesting about it, I told you my summer program I did where I busted and I didn't get to finish. They changed that program. The Air Force also learned. They said, wow, if we had like another 2 or 3 hours, I know I could have sold it like another 2 or 3 hours. Just need a little bit more time. I'd only been on a plane twice in my life, right? So a little bit more time, I would have gotten it. So they stopped screening people out and they turned it into a flight training prep for UPT now, so that you're not getting kicked out after you've been selected. You've gotten that far. So yeah, AIM High Flight Academy includes high school students, 16 to 18, and then those ROTC cadets in the summertime that are going to go do that prep because they understand that there's a lot of people like me, okay? So those are the two things that I can tell them about. I also tell them to come to the Women Aviation International chapter because I'm part of the San Francisco chapter where we have our breakfasts so that they can meet women who have done both pathways. I'll stop there because I do a lot of that, yeah. I research a lot. And then if there are high school students, then yeah, you bet I'm gonna talk about your program here. Because now I know. Now I know a whole lot more. Yes? Diversity in the Air Force culture. It came in two flavors. The first one was, really I don't think it has much to do with me being a woman as it had the fact that I love to ask questions. In class, there's another, take this with you. Why would you be in a program where your job as a lieutenant is to learn? Like you're getting paid to be there, right? Like they're paying you to be a flight student. This is where a paycheck's coming from. And you get to the end of the class and you didn't understand something, so why would you not ask a question? Why would you pretend that you got it when you didn't? I don't understand, right? But there's guys who didn't want to raise their hand. And so I was the one who would always raise their hand, hey, can you go back to that whatever and explain this and this and this and the radar approach, whatever. And so they would explain it again. And we take notes and understand a little bit better. And everybody else is taking notes. My question, but obviously you needed to hear it too, right? So part of it was getting ragged on. Why do you ask so many questions? Do you have somewhere else to go? This is our job to be here. So I don't think that was as much because I was a woman, because I really wanted to know the material. Okay. The adversity part came later. It didn't really come in training. It came, in deployments where people thought, ooh, women, deployed, target, right? I think that's where it came. I'm running by myself in Saudi Arabia. It must mean that I want you to come chase me. Stuff like that, right? So yeah, that's where it came from, just being severely outnumbered on deployments and having to make it clear that you're not there for any other reason other than to fly the airplane and do your mission. So that's the best answer I can give you. Material-wise, curriculum-wise, no, I told you my story. I was super competitive. And I organized the study groups and stuff like that. So yeah, thank you for the question. Any others? Right here. The balance question. I am so not balanced. I'm tipping all the way over here right now. I've been gone since October 9th from my house. I'll be back on the 24th after the next air show. I don't do that every month. Owning my own business, I get to choose. When you called me, you said, would you be available for this keynote? Remember the first thing I asked you, I'm like, is this virtual? So I'm going to be between air shows, and he's like, no, we want you to actually come on campus. I'm like, oh, so let me check. So I looked, and yeah, I could forego my day of rest after the air show that I usually have, and I could fly up to Grand Forks. And I did, because I love to do this work. So the balance comes from my husband being super supportive, and you know he also travels for business, and my kids now being older. Only started the air show industry last year. By then, one of my daughters had graduated and moved out. Milagro was still in school, and we had a 17-year-old boy. Before that, I would take my kids traveling with me. As an entrepreneur, as a business owner, I can say, oh yes, I do want to go do a keynote at Texas A&M. Oh, I'll take my son or my daughter will go to the Space Center in Houston, right? So we made fun trips out of it. So the entrepreneurship pathway made it so much easier to balance, which means there is no balance. It's like all the way this way, I'm home, I'm gardening, going to school functions, or I'm totally gone, but I took a kid with me. And it's really, it's more of like running really fast to both ends of the seesaw so that it doesn't crash, like that. So it's that kind of thing. It's not really like a balance. It's like like that. That's the best answer. But as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you can schedule your trips and you can say yes or no. So that's how you balance it. And there's always the village. It's always the, hey, can you pick him up at 9 o'clock after marching band practice because I'm not there. So it's a lot of the village. You'll be successful when you surround yourself with people who want to be successful, and families want each other to be successful. That's how we do it. Build that village. That's a really good question. Thank you. I appreciate it. Anyone else? So, oh, one more? Yes. Oh, scary moments. I'm surprised no one's asked yet. Okay, good. Flying over Iraq at night. The tanker usually has lights on, so you can find the tanker when you're coming up to get gas. Well, when you're over hostile territory, you turn your lights off. So you've got the A6 coming off the aircraft carrier. Oh, and we're doing a probe and drogue, which is like I showed you the boom, like with the wings to fly around. The Navy requires us to put this basket on that kind of flops around. And it's crazy. So this basket's flopping in the dark, and we have our lights off, and this A6 is trying to cut behind us to get some fuel, and he just hit us. He hit us really hard from behind, and we felt the jolt, and when that happens, there's an emergency procedure. The boom operator calls breakaway, breakaway, breakaway. Usually, you don't get hit, but in this particular case, he was trying to get the basket, and he hit us. So she called the emergency, we separated, and that means tanker fly up, receiver fly down, we separate, gotta check and see if you're okay. And he was not okay. He'd actually broken the probe off, and he had to go declare emergency, go back to his carrier. We were okay. We had like a little body damage up in your car, but other than that, we didn't break a tank or anything. So that was pretty scary, actually, getting hit. And the other one was a lightning strike about 10 feet off the runway, doing touch and goes in Spokane International Airport next to our base. It drilled a hole through the radome, basketball-sized hole. And we saw the whole St. Elmo's fire thing going back through the plane. But we landed, and what was scary about it is standing underneath the nose and looking up and seeing the blue sky. Because it literally drilled a hole through the nose. So, still pretty scary. But, so getting hit and getting hit by lightning. But that was 2 times in 8.5 years, so I feel pretty good. Always a good drama question, I appreciate it. Okay, any other questions? All right, I was asked to ask all the speakers to gather on stage for a photo. All the panelists, speakers that were here, come on up. Let's all be together. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate the questions. I'm going to be doing a book signing in the back there after the picture.